Before we even begin, you're not just tired. You're confused because you've been fighting something that no one else can see. No evidence, no visible struggle, no external pressure anyone can point to. But internally, you've been carrying weight, quietly. And what's been breaking you is not the battle itself. It's the fact that no one recognizes it. So now you're left asking, is this even real? Am I just overthinking? Why does this feel so heavy? If nothing is actually happening. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. Some of the most important battles in your life were never meant to be seen. You've been measuring struggle the wrong way. You think something only counts if it can be seen. If there's proof, if there's damage people can point to, if there's a situation you can explain clearly. But internal battles don't work like that. They don't announce themselves. They don't create obvious disruptions. They exist in your thoughts, in your decisions, in the tension between what you feel and what you're trying to become. And because no one else can see that process, you start minimizing it. You start telling yourself, it's not that serious. Other people are going through worse. I should be fine. So instead of addressing it, you suppress it. And that's where the damage starts. Because what you refuse to acknowledge doesn't disappear. It compounds. This is where it gets uncomfortable. You don't just struggle. You question the validity of your struggle because there's no external confirmation. No one pulling you aside saying, I see what you're carrying. No visible breakdown that forces people to notice. So you begin to invalidate your own experience. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. You downplay your emotional weight. You compare your internal state to other people's visible situations. And slowly, you disconnect from yourself. You stop trusting what you feel. You stop respecting what's happening internally. And now the battle gets harder. Not because it intensified, but because you removed your own support. This is the part no one talks about. You're expected to function normally, to show up, to respond, to engage. Because on the outside, nothing looks wrong. So people interact with you based on what they see, not what you're carrying. And you play along. You smile. You answer. You move through your day. But internally, there's tension. There's resistance. There's a constant mental weight you're managing. And over time, that split between your internal reality and external appearance becomes exhausting because you're not just fighting the battle. You're maintaining the illusion that there is no battle. Here's what you've underestimated. Invisible battles are not minor. They are foundational because they don't just affect what you do. They shape how you think, how you respond, how you interpret situations, how you make decisions. They influence your direction, quietly, consistently, without needing attention. And if you don't become aware of them, they will shape your life without your consent. This is the first sign. You feel tired, but you can't explain it properly. You've rested. You've slept. You haven't done anything physically demanding. And yet, there's a constant mental fatigue. That's not random. It's coming from internal tension. Because when your mind is constantly processing, constantly questioning, constantly managing conflicting thoughts, it never fully settles. You're always thinking about something beneath the surface, even when you're not actively aware of it. And that continuous background pressure, it drains you, quietly, so you end up exhausted. Without a clear reason, this is more dangerous than the battle itself. Because now, it's not just about what you're facing, it's about how you relate to yourself. You feel something, but you question it. You sense something is off, but you dismiss it. You want to move in a certain direction, but you hesitate. Why? Because you've been invalidating your internal experience. Over time, that creates hesitation, second-guessing, indecision. And now even simple choices feel heavier than they should. Not because they are complicated, but because you no longer trust your own clarity. This is where people get stuck long-term. Instead of resolving the internal tension, you adjust to it. You normalize it. This is just how I feel now. This is just how things are. So you stop trying to understand it. You stop trying to unpack it. You just carry it. And the problem with that? What you normalize, you stop questioning. And what you stop questioning starts shaping your identity. Now it's no longer, I'm dealing with something. It becomes, this is just who I am. And that's how internal battles quietly redefine people. This is the external effect. Even though the battle is internal, it starts showing up in how you respond to life. You become more sensitive, more easily triggered, more withdrawn or inconsistent. Not because your environment changed, but because your internal capacity is reduced. You don't have the same stability, so small things feel bigger. Simple situations feel overwhelming, and your reactions become more about managing your internal state than responding to what's actually happening. This is the long-term consequence. When your mind is constantly occupied with unresolved internal tension, you lose focus. You start questioning what you want, what you're doing, where you're going. Not because your direction is wrong, but because your internal state is unstable. So everything feels uncertain, everything feels unclear. And you misinterpret that as, I don't know what I'm doing. When in reality, you're just overloaded internally. You've been interpreting this all wrong. You've been seeing these internal struggles as interruptions, as obstacles, as something working against you. But look closer. What if these battles are not designed to destroy you, but to expose what is already within you? Because pressure doesn't create something new out of nothing. It reveals what's there. It brings hidden patterns to the surface. It exposes the way you think under tension. It uncovers your default reactions when clarity disappears. Without these moments, you would never see those things clearly. You would continue moving through life thinking you're stable, thinking you're aligned, thinking you're in control. But internally, there would be gaps, weak points, unexamined habits, unstable thinking patterns. So these invisible battles do something most people avoid. They remove the illusion. They strip away the version of yourself you thought was solid and show you what actually needs to be strengthened. And that's why they feel uncomfortable, because exposure always does. You've been conditioned to look for visible confirmation, something changing, something improving, something happening externally that reassures you. But spiritual work doesn't follow that pattern. Some of the most important adjustments in your life happen in areas that no one else will ever witness. Your thinking shifts. Your perception deepens. Your reactions begin to change. And none of that is loud. None of that is obvious. It's internal, subtle, gradual, but powerful. Because once those internal shifts stabilize, everything external begins to follow. But you've been doing it backwards. You've been looking for external movement first, instead of recognizing that internal alignment is what makes external change sustainable. So when things feel quiet, when there's no visible progress, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means the work is happening in a place where visibility is not the priority, alignment is. This is where most people break, because silence makes you uncomfortable when there's no feedback, no confirmation, no clear indication of what's next. Your mind fills the gap with doubt, with assumptions, with worst-case interpretations. You start thinking, maybe this isn't working. Maybe I've missed something. Maybe I'm just stuck. But what you're calling silence is not absence. It's precision, because not every phase requires noise. Not every stage requires explanation. Some processes are too detailed, too specific, too intentional to be rushed or constantly revealed. Think about it. If everything was visible too early, you would interfere. You would adjust things prematurely. You would rush decisions. You would try to control outcomes you don't fully understand yet. So the silence protects the process. It limits your interference. It forces you to develop something you've been avoiding. Trust without constant explanation. Let's be honest. You're used to recognizing growth when it's acknowledged, when people notice, when results show, when progress is visible. But what about the growth no one claps for? The moments where you choose discipline over impulse. You stay steady when you feel uncertain. You resist reacting the way you used to. No one sees that. No one rewards that. But that's where real strength is built. Because it's not dependent on recognition. It's not fueled by validation. It's internal. And that kind of strength is what allows you to handle what's coming next. Because if your growth depends on being seen, it won't hold when you're alone. So these invisible battles train you in something deeper. Integrity without an audience. Stability without applause. Consistency without external motivation. And that is rare. You've been labeling this as pressure. Something heavy. Something uncomfortable. Something you want to escape. But pressure in its proper function is refinement. It removes what's unnecessary. It exposes what's weak. It strengthens what remains, but only if you stay in it long enough. Because refinement is not instant. It requires time, consistency, willingness to remain, even when it's uncomfortable. And that's where you've struggled. You've been trying to exit the process before it completes. You feel pressure, and you want relief. You feel discomfort, and you want change. But refinement doesn't respond to urgency. It responds to endurance. So the question is no longer, how do I get out of this? It becomes, what is this removing from me? And what is it strengthening? Because once you shift that perspective, you stop resisting the process, and you start cooperating with it. From this point forward, you need to cut one habit completely: the need for visible confirmation. You've been waiting for something outside of you to justify what you feel inside. A sign, a result, a shift that proves, okay, this is real. But invisible battles don't work like that. They don't come with evidence you can show people. They don't come with obvious timelines or measurable checkpoints. And if you keep waiting for proof, you will keep doubting yourself. So this is the shift. You start taking your internal experience seriously, without needing external validation. That means you acknowledge what you're carrying. You stop minimizing it. You stop comparing it to other people's visible struggles. Because the moment you respect what's happening internally, you regain stability. And without that, nothing else holds. This is critical, and this is where most people collapse. You've been experiencing the battle for so long. You've started identifying with it. I'm always like this. I'm just someone who struggles mentally. I can't stay consistent. No, that's not truth. That's repetition. There's a difference. A battle is something you are facing. An identity is something you believe you are. If you confuse the two, you stop fighting because you think there's nothing to fight against. So you need to make this separation clear. You are not your doubt. You are not your inconsistency. You are not your internal tension. You are the one observing it, responding to it, learning to manage it. And once you see that clearly, you regain authority. Right now, your consistency is tied to how you feel. When you feel clear, you move well. When you feel uncertain, you slow down. When you feel overwhelmed, you withdraw. That's unstable, because emotions fluctuate constantly. If your actions depend on them, your progress will always be inconsistent. So the shift is simple but not easy. You move based on alignment, not emotion. That means you continue even when it feels heavy. You stay consistent even when it feels pointless. You maintain direction even when clarity isn't perfect. Not blindly, but intentionally, because you've already decided what matters, and you don't renegotiate that decision every time your feelings change. That's how stability is built. You've been trying to feel better, distracting yourself, avoiding certain thoughts, pushing through without reflection. But that only manages the surface. It doesn't resolve anything. So instead of asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? Ask, what is this showing me? Because every internal tension points to something. A belief that needs to be challenged. A fear that hasn't been addressed. A pattern that keeps repeating. And if you don't investigate it, it will keep showing up. Different situations. Same internal response. So slow down. Not to overthink, but to understand. Because once you understand the pattern, you stop reacting to it blindly. This is the hardest part. Because there's no applause here. No recognition. No external encouragement. No one checking if you're staying consistent. It's just you. And your ability to remain steady without being seen, without being validated, without being reassured. And that's exactly why it matters. Because if you can hold your ground here, in silence, in uncertainty, in invisible pressure, then nothing external will shake you later. Not opinions, not delays, not unexpected challenges. Because your stability was never built on being seen. Father, I come before you without pretending strength I don't have. Because you see what no one else sees. You see the battles I haven't explained, the thoughts I haven't spoken, the weight I've been carrying in silence. And I acknowledge it now, fully, not dismissing it as something small, because even what is unseen has been shaping me. Lord, I admit that I have doubted myself. I've questioned what I feel. I've invalidated my own struggles, because no one else could see them. I told myself I should be fine, that it wasn't serious, that I was overthinking. And in doing that, I disconnected from myself. So today I ask you to restore that connection. Let me see clearly what is happening within me, without fear, without avoidance. Father, bring order to my thoughts, because the noise has been constant. Confusion, second-guessing, internal tension that doesn't settle easily. Quiet what is unnecessary, strengthen what is true, and give me the clarity to recognize the difference. Lord, I release the need for external validation. I don't need everything I go through to be seen. I don't need every battle to be understood by others. Because you see it, you understand it, and that is enough. Anchor me in that truth. Father, separate me from what I am facing. Remind me that I am not my doubt. I am not my fear. I am not my inconsistency. These are things I am learning to overcome, not identities I am meant to carry. Give me authority over my internal state, not control in fear, but stability in truth. Lord, teach me to remain steady, not only when things feel clear, but when they don't. Not only when I feel strong, but when I feel uncertain. Let my consistency not depend on emotion. Let my direction not collapse under pressure. Build something within me that holds, even in silence. Father, help me understand what I am experiencing instead of running from discomfort. Teach me to learn from it. Show me what needs to change, what needs to be released, what needs to be strengthened. Because I don't want to carry patterns I don't understand. Lord, give me the strength to stand when no one else sees the fight, when there is no encouragement, no recognition, no external support. Let me remain grounded, not for attention, but for alignment, because I know what is built in private will sustain me in public. Father, I surrender these invisible battles to you, not because they disappear instantly, but because I trust that they are not pointless. They are shaping me, refining me, strengthening areas I did not see before. So I stop resisting, I stop doubting, I stop questioning whether this matters. From this moment forward, I will not ignore what is happening within me. I will not dismiss my own growth just because it is unseen. I will not abandon the process just because it is quiet. I will stand, steady, aware, even in battles no one else understands, even in moments no one else recognizes, even in silence, I will remain grounded. In Jesus' name, Amen. Today, you don't need to prove anything, not to people, not even to yourself. Just remain steady. Respect what is happening internally. Stop dismissing unseen growth. Hold your ground, even without recognition. Because what you're going through is not random. It's shaping you.